Marshall and Paul have the call.
Paul, do you promise you will never turn into a machine, or at least let me know?
I will try my best.
I don't know how Maria handles it.
Wow.
Monty just converted right in front of his eyes.
The voice change got me really good. I'm not going to lie.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, no machines here. Just me, Marshall Cycliffe, him, Paul Gian, and we're bringing you more standard coverage here from Minneapolis. As I mentioned on the news desk, we've got Zen Takahashi from New Zealand playing against Shota Yasooka from Japan. The most interesting thing is Shota's deck choice here. You know, we call him a lone wolf tester, right?
The ultimate lone wolf.
Right,
yes.
he really is.
Yeah.
You know, most of the top players of his caliber will test in a team setting, and they'll leverage, you know, the amount of work a group can do versus a single person. And he doesn't. He tests by himself. He figures out his own stuff, and it hasn't slowed him down any at all. But he did come here with a much different list than I think most people would have expected him to play, and also not the most popular deck either.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just incredible that he's been able to string together the results that he has by himself, right?
I don't
You get
it.
so much from being on a team, and the fact that he can just do this on his own with his own decks, it's always great to see. And yes, the deck that he's playing for this tournament is Esper Legends. If you look at any of the big teams, none of them are playing Esper Legends. They all chose to submit 4 copies of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, right? And coming into this, Esper Legends was one of the big decks that a lot of people considered, but Shota, well, you know what? I'm gonna keep playing this deck. I don't need Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I'm going to curve out and just make sure, kind of force you to have answers to the threats that I have. Now, I will note, Shota does have a very important card in the main, anticipating all of these mid-range strategies and perhaps decks that are trying to go over the top. He's got 4 copies of Make Disappear in the main. That is not a card that you see in these Esper Legends decks, and that's all you need. You just need that 1 copy most of the time, and it's going to be backbreaking against these Reanimator strategies.
Now, when you and I were talking about this deck before, Paul, you were saying that as long as the whoever's not on Esper can keep up, then they can go 1 for 1, go 1 for 1, go for 1 for 1 with removal, and then they can have an opening to try to win the game. Right now, we see something in the middle. Shota had Skrelv, but it got cut down, but now he gets to untap with active Rona, but in the meantime, Zen has deployed the most popular card in the whole format.
Oh, and look at this. Yes, absolutely. I mean, anytime somebody goes removal spell into Fable, it's like, oh, I've seen that one before, and we're going to see a lot more of that throughout the course of this tournament.
See
now,
the Transmogrant into the graveyard here?
Yeah, Transmogrant, excellent. Typically better against Grixis strategies as they have far more non-basic lands. Now, Zen Takahashi, however, on just straight Rakdos, meaning he's already got 1 basic in play, so doesn't have to worry about that Transmogrant coming into play until at least turn 5 if he does have all non-basics in hand. But this is one of those matchups when you kind of look at how these decks stack up against each other, where often if the Esper Legends deck doesn't get off to a quick start, you're going to be favoring the Rakdos side of things, right?
Zen asked to go to combat, but it's going to be Otawara here to send the Goblin token packing. It will not be coming back.
And it's going to have to be a Shieldred here, right? If you're Zen Takahashi, just slam it and hope there's no go for the throat on upkeep.
Hello.
All right.
There's Legends on both sides of the battlefield now.
That's right.
There's Shieldred for Zen.
And that is a go for the throat, I think.
There it is.
Yep.
Needed it. Had it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I will say, like, is this where Shota really wants to be at this point? I mean,
he's doing an okay job of keeping up, but I do get what you're trying to say here.
Yeah.
He wants to find some creatures that can actually attack. Rona's a fantastic card, but doesn't really put on much of a clock unless you have something like a Rafine in play.
Rona's going to use that loot ability and discard an additional copy of Rona. You can see why Rona was added to this deck. With legendary creatures, the first copy is great, second copy is usually not so great, and Rona allows you to filter through, make sure your mana's in place, make sure you can hit your curve, etc. And in this case, it found an answer.
And Shota with a Denic in hand, so deciding whether or not he wants to deploy the Denic. Denic is a nice creature to have and play against Reanimator because it forces the Rakdos to kill the Denic before they can cast a Cruelty of Gix to get a big creature from the graveyard onto the battlefield. But looking to keep that make disappear up instead because he just doesn't want Zen to just go turn 5. This is the turn where Zen can go turn 5, land, Cruelty of Gix here.
That's right. That's the nightmare scenario. But Shota, ooh, go for the throat is actually going to hit that second copy of Rona. So very much a controlling, jockeying for position type game. As you can see, only one non-land permanent has remained on the battlefield between both players thus far. Can Shota come up with a haymaker here? Ooh, I saw one come off the top of the library.
Oh, yeah?
That was Shieldred.
Yeah, so this is just kind of the awkward thing with this mana, because you can just go Shieldred go, but then all of a sudden that leaves the door open for Zen Takahashi to play one of his bigger cards.
So that's not what's going to happen here. Instead, it's going to be Denic go, and that lets Shota keep some type of reactive cards in hand. Okay, that's Phyrexian Flesh Scourger there for Zen Takahashi. He's going to play it for its prototype cost here.
So just a 3/3 Menace Lifelinker on this board. Shota can choose to make this appear, but would need to sacrifice the Denic if he wants to fully counter the Flesh Gorger.
Of course, Zen Takahashi, he knows. He's playing around Make Disappear by making this play.
And one thing to note, though, is you do see that Soul Transfer is in Zen Takahashi's hand. If this resolves, well, guess what? You have an artifact and an enchantment in play. So you can get some extra value off that Soul Transfer.
All right, and Shota has decided that he can't afford to sit here and only keep up 2 mana with no more 2 mana plays left. He's just going to run out Shieldred. And this is a big inflection point here for game number 1 between these two players.
Yeah, and Zen's going to be able to exile this Shieldred and get back. Oh, excuse me, won't be able to get back the Flesh Gorger because Denic is in play.
Cut down.
Oh,
never
cancel
mind.
that order, Paul.
Never mind.
Cut down the Denic.
Oh, the value.
Yeah, so this is just a
value.
disgusting turn here for Zen Takahashi. And this is going to put him well and truly in the driver's seat to pick up game number 1 against Shota.
10, and I go to 27.
And he passes the turn back over. Can Shota find a way out of game number 1? He has no permanence. Well, Old Faithful Shieldred.
Okay.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, well, so we're going to see dueling Shieldreds here if Zen Takahashi doesn't find a way to kill this one.
Lots of triggers on the stack.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I'm on 25?
Shieldred trigger resolving there. And once again, we're going to see this big attack. 2 menace creatures means no blocks available for Shota. And this could be the hammer here for Zen Takahashi. He deploys his own copy of Shieldred. Is there anything Shota can do?
Needs to find a way to get this Shieldred off, but I think this is maybe just a little bit too much here.
It's very difficult to race when your opponent has a Shieldred, but when you have your own or when you're slamming for 6 that can't be blocked, that actually can keep up.
There's an Iganjo here, but that's not going to be enough.
Right.
So I think this is going to likely go to Zen here.
Very close game for most of it, and then there was that double spell turn from Zen Takahashi, and the floodgates opened.
Yeah, that cut down was huge.
Huge. Yeah,
allowing Zen to get max value with the Soul Transfer.
Okay, well, Shota's not done yet. Let's see what he's got. He's got 4 cards in hand. You can see the Raven Man is going to hit the battlefield here. And he'll leave up Make Disappear and Iganjo he can choose. If you haven't seen the Esper Legends list play itself out, yes, of course you get these ultra powerful legendary gold cards, and even the non-gold ones are great. But you also get to cast those lands that cycle for an effect for very cheap because of their cost reduction ability when all your creatures are legendary. It's not to be overlooked.
You know, I kind of like this Flesh Gorger, by the way, because
Raven Man's going to get burned out, and that means attacks incoming, enough to pick up game number 1 for Zen Takahashi. That'll bring us to game number 2 post boards here. Kind of funny, Paul. I was looking at our player surveys for these guys. 2 really funny things. One of them, Zen said to the question, who are you testing with for this tournament? Listed every player, teams called Team Worldly Council, Alberto Manchado, all the way through to Zen Takahashi, A to Z. There's probably 15 names on that list.
Yeah.
Shota wrote,
no.
And he wrote it lowercase,
Right.
no punctuation. And then when asked who is a player you'd most like to play at the Pro Tour, Shota wrote nothing. And Zen wrote Shota Yasooka because he looks like my dad.
Well, again, got who he was asking for.
They're asking for it today, and he's up a game too. So maybe it'll work. You know, sometimes you just can't be scared.
And this is kind of that ideal start here if you're the Esper Legends. That's Skrelv into Transmogrant into Rafine. So really hard for spot removal to do something. If you're on Zen Takahashi's side, really need a sweeper, and he does have one here with Brotherhood's Hand, so that will get rid of the 2 of the creatures on board. Still has to deal with that Rafine,
Rafine, though, is the crux of this deck in many ways, right? This is the kind of payoff, the thing to protect, the thing that, if left unchecked for a couple turns, will win you the game in short order. We see Denick come back.
And discarding a creature, investigating, so getting a lot of value here.
Oh, boy, this is a lot.
This is tough. So, I mean, Zen does have a go for the throat here for Rafine, but Shota's gotten some value here, and there's 2 Transmogrants in the graveyard. Now again, because Zen is on Rakdos, he's got 2 basics in play, so doesn't have to worry about that coming into play for a bit.
Chat's wondering about how he casts Brotherhood's End there, Paul. You see the Mirix on the Mirix on the battlefield. That has the one-time ability to tap for any color of mana. The turn at ETBs, you can tap it for any color.
Right, and now it'll just tap for colorless mana or make a 1/1 might.
Right. Is Mirix the new Urborg? That's the question. We'll find out this weekend.
It's more like a Castle Ardenvale, if you ask me. But
okay, all right. Your vote's been noted.
Creature card. Okay. Oh, XR.
And there's an answer now.
No investigate there.
11.
Yeah, that was the clue from before that was just on the way from the judges.
But now, I mean, Zen is looking to be at 11, and yeah, Shota doesn't have a counterspell, so he's just going to continue jamming his threats here.
Ayo, the Dawn Sky is going to hit the
no
battlefield.
big creature in graveyard, nothing to reanimate, right? So we're kind of at the point where Zen just needs to just play whatever big threat he might have here. We saw Shieldred, but Shieldred doesn't fly. And we're looking at 8 power in the sky here for Shota Yasooka.
I don't get it. Where's all the reanimation? Like, let's see some big stuff. Where's
it's
Atali?
more like a Rakdos midrange deck that just has a couple of big things.
It has the
That's
Oops, I
just kind of how
Gotcha
it plays,
package.
right.
Okay, I get you.
Yep. Shota currently with no answer.
And the Drainos are coming in strong now.
Oh, is that a Rafine? Is that enough? 1 short potentially, right? If you go Rafine, attack with both flyers, draw 2, you'll take 4. You can potentially put 2 counters on your creatures. That'll be not quite enough for a lethal attack.
But either way,
Still
a second
probably playing
Rafine
it.
would just be good enough, right?
Okay. Digging here just to see if they can, if Shota here can find something else here to deal with the Shieldred. So this is going to put Zen down to 3. Draw a card, go up to 5. Got a dragon to play, or go for the throat. Likely looking for a land here to be able to go at Sushi plus go for the throat.
Okay.
It's like, oh, no cut down? Good.
So you go to 12.
He pointed at it first.
Right. A lot of options here for Shota.
Okay. So I take 10. Go to 1.
10 damage going to
You
1.
heard Zen say that. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I'll take 10.
Well,
go
can't
to
cast
1.
Cruelty of
Well, I
Gix
go to 3.
unless you go to Chapter 3 immediately.
Right.
And I
Not a lot doing
Yeah, I don't
with
think
that.
he has enough.
And that's going to be
There we
it.
go.
Game number 2 goes to Zen Takahashi. Excuse me, goes to Shota Yasooka. That's going to even things up. And let's see who can pick up this final one. I'm really curious to see if Shota can put together that dream curve. That's the tension early.
Right.
You see an untapped land here for Zen.
And Zen's hand is fantastic.
There's a duress, though, from Shota, so he's going to take a more proactive, maybe it's more reactive? I don't know how you want to describe a duress,
Right.
but he's going to try to dismantle the plan here from Zen Takahashi.
Nab one of these removal spells.
Yeah, that
Likely
cut
the
down hiding there.
Cut down, possibly the barrage.
Mm-hmm.
The barrage is nice because it's just a clean 1-mana answer to Rafine.
And that's why it's going to go away here.
Drop.
But when you're using duresses, that's a card out of your hand. That's
Right.
not a threat on the battlefield. Pass the turn back over, land go.
And Zen's just kind of on the, all right, removal spells and Shieldred.
That plan does work.
It's a good plan,
Yeah,
Marshall.
it's
a
not-
very good plan.
You know, you want to have a little more going on, but
Right.
that's a real thing.
And Shota does know about the cut down, so he might just pass. Yeah.
He's doing that twice now. So you're thinking Rafine?
Right. Well, Shota could have played the Rafine, but given
Uh-huh.
that he knows about the cut down, he's just going to pass.
Right.
And now if you're on Zen's side, you have the ability to play Shieldred, but then you go, do you still have Make This Appear? Are you going to go for the Throat Me? Is it better for me to just pass?
It sure doesn't feel like being the first one to go for something, have it answered, and have your opponent untap and play something would be a very fun spot to be in here.
Oh, he's
But
going for it.
That being said, Zen doesn't see any other way forward, and he's going to get his Shieldred, immediately go for the Throated. Now, is there anything great here for Shota, though? Because having no creatures
There
out,
you go.
that's
So-
really nice.
So now
Rona.
you have Rona plus negate up. Shota knows about the removal. Likely will just let the removal spell happen. I suppose he doesn't know about the Abrade, right? He only knows about cut down.
Yep, that's
so if
true.
he values having the ability to loot with Rona, and of course you can always transform it just to start getting in for 5, that's an option.
I don't think he'll be too sad about this. I mean, his hand is already pretty stacked. It wasn't like he desperately needed to get Rona rolling.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him let this go, but Rona has been really, really strong so far.
Right.
Let's see what he does.
Because Shota does have the 5th land, so next turn, if he just lets this die, he can just go Rafine counter.
Oh,
but he's
sure.
going for it right away.
But he knows that he's going to get it cut
Cut
down
down?
at this point, but
Right.
maybe that's what he wanted.
Now is it just AO time or do you Rafine?
AO
All right.
time.
He's
Boom.
saying, Zen, if you have something here, go for it.
Yeah.
Now, Soul Transfer is a great answer to AO. It exiles. So you do not get the death trigger on the AO when you cast the Soul Transfer. So I imagine Zen is going to fire that off here. But now Zen's out of action here,
Now
and
we're gonna
Shota still
see.
has Rafine.
We're going to see haymakers here. Only one card left for Zen Takahashi. Now, even if Shota doesn't know what it is, he knows he can just put the pedal to the metal here. And there's Rafine.
All right.
And look at this, a Transmogrant as well. This is it. This was Shota's big play. This is what
Yeah.
he culminated up to.
Zen is now looking for the heavy hitters. That helps you
Okay.
find it. That helps you find
He's
it.
got some time. He's not going to die right away to
Right.
the board, so
Now, Zen does have 4 non-basics in play. So if the Transmogrant dies, Shota, all he needs to do is just tap for 2 black mana, put that Transmogrant back into play as a 4/2.
so that will be a continued source of annoyance
Right.
for Zen.
And now Shota gets to dig and just try to find the perfect answer. Probably would feel extremely safe if you can just find a negate, a counterspell for a potential Atali off the top, for example.
Right.
Assuming Zen kept the combo in. I can totally see Zen sideboarding into a way where he just goes, I'm just going to play Rakdos midrange.
Yeah.
I'm just going to have a bunch of removal spells and get you with Shieldred.
That makes perfect sense. Why go for the big splashy stuff against somebody who's packing counterspells
Absolutely.
anyway? Ooh, heavy heavy hitters, though, from
Jeez.
Shota. He found Shieldred, the Apocalypse, and now the pressure is really there for Zen. He just doesn't have much time, but he does have Chapter 2.
And Fable's going to be painful. If Zen goes to Rummage here, for every card you discard, that's an extra 2 points of damage. Ooh.
But he really needs to find, like, he can't not.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a removal spell, you have to Rummage. Oh. That is a go for the throat, so if there's a trigger here...
Get rid of that
you
land.
You can kill the Shieldred first, right?
True.
Trigger on the stack, kill the Shieldred, and then Rummage that last land.
But he's not.
Okay. Huh.
I mean, are you not always killing Shieldred with Go for the Throat here?
And you have to use you have to use a removal spell here because there's a Plaza of Heroes in play.
Right.
So the moment Shota untaps, all of a sudden, Shota at this point doesn't need to add anything else to the board, keep up Plaza for Shieldred, and then just try to dig for counter spells.
He found a mountain, by the way. Yeah, so that extra 2 points is going to sting here.
Yeah, perhaps Zen was looking for the chance to top deck a 7-mana card like an Itali. Maybe he kept that in, right?
Okay. He did attack with the Goblin, by the way. He just says, come at me. And here comes the squad. Another trigger from Rafine.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, this is where you just get to see Rafine do some serious damage.
This is beautifully played here by Shota Yasooka. Straightforward, careful, not unnecessarily risky, but not too conservative either. Looks like Skrelv and a land hitting the graveyard.
So get in for 6. Now we're at 5 life here. Second Plaza. And has an Otawara in hand.
It's going to be tough to beat.
Absolutely.
Okay, Chapter 3 is going to hit. Reflection's going to hit the battlefield. And this might be it for Zen if he doesn't have some serious heat. Oh, he just passed the turn back.
And this is part of what makes this deck so incredible. Just the fact that your lands all do something.
Right,
so
Plaza's
many of them.
just sitting there laughing.
The channel lands are fantastic.
Totally. And they're going to come in, and Zen says, absolutely, do your thing.
Too. If you can find 2 things to discard, that's lethal.
And that's going to do it. Shota Yasooka picks up yet another victory, remains undefeated. And you know what? Zen asked for it.
He did.
He said, I want to play against him, although he didn't say because I think I can beat him.
Right.
To be fair to Zen.
Yeah.
Right? He said it for more of humorous reasons.
Look, I have a similar situation. I have a couple of kids, right? And every now and then they go, you know what? I think I can beat you at something. And then, you just got to put them in their place. So, that's what Shota did, right? It's just, it's like, hey, he looks like my dad. I think I can beat Dad this time.
That's
not
great.
so much.
That's
not
great.
So much.
Yeah, well, he might not be there quite yet. Right? Keep grinding those Zen. Both of them, though, with a great record and near the top of the standings here. We're going to actually head over to Maria at the news desk, who's going to help set up our next match right now.
Coming up next, we've got Luis Scott-Vargas versus Jim Davis.
Luis is on Grixis Reanimator. This is the build of the deck that we saw him and some of his teammates develop with Invasion of Amonkhet alongside Nahiri's Warcrafting additional tools to get powerful cards like Atraxa or Itali onto the battlefield. On the other side, Jim is on Rakdos Breach. Teammates, but on separate decks. This deck is trying to be your classic Rakdos midrange deck, but going a little bigger. You do still have Invoke Despairs in the deck, but you are using Big Score to ramp out cards like Chandra, Itali, and Breach the Multiverse to really put together that explosive endgame.
It's Team CFB battling up next after the break.
And welcome back to coverage here at Pro Tour March of the Machine. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. We're in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Got a couple of undefeated players in our feature match here ready to face off here, Paul. We've got Luis Scott-Vargas and Jim Davis. They're teammates.
Yeah.
Team CFB Pantheon and Friends, I think they call themselves. It's a lot.
Team bunch of great players.
Yeah, bunch of great. It really is.
Yeah.
It's also like the older guys.
The old guard.
You know what I mean? Yeah, the old guard. There you go.
There you go.
No, but it was nice. We had a chance to talk to a bunch of the team members, and they all said it was really chill. Like it was super like professional. Like they all know what they're supposed to do. They've done this 1,000 times, and it was a good testing experience for both of them. Though, interestingly, they came up with different decks. They are not. The whole team's not on the same list. You see Grixis Reanimator here for Luis, while Jim is on Rakdos Breach, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the same deck that Seth Manfield played that Luis played last round.
Yeah, so Seth Manfield is the one who kind of put the Rakdos Breach together. But, you know, there's different names for what these decks are trying to do, but in the end, it was kind of a pick your poison type thing. It's like, hey, we have this really powerful shell of Fable of the Mirror Breaker and 4 Bloodtithe Harvester, but I want to go over the top of all the other mid-range strategies. How do I want to do that? Luis Scott-Vargas' side, he wants to go the Reanimator strategy. I want to get Atraxa and Natalia into play with Cruelty of Gix. On the other side, Jim Davis goes, you know what? I'm going to try to ramp and just cast Breach the Multiverse and win that way.
Key card here that we may see as well is Invasion of Amonkhet. That was kind of the tech that they figured out for Luis's version of the deck, which gives them the ability to have more reanimate style spells, and it allows you to do it even sooner than you'd normally be able to.
Right, absolutely. Great discard effect. It's just a good card.
It's just a good card.
Just a good card to play.
The only downside is that it doesn't affect the board when you play it, so if you're under extreme pressure, you can really fall behind, but that's not really how this matchup plays out.
Right, and specifically for this format, I think it was a pretty good choice. Just because kind of coming into this, if you think, well, we're not going to really expect a lot of aggro, and we're going to expect a lot of mid-range, you can afford to start changing your main deck configuration a little bit, just so you can skew it to beat the other Rakdos deck. For example, main decking cards like the rest, right? When you're expecting not a bunch of mono red or mono white to just run people over, you can start hedging and start playing more cards like that.
How do we have for a start here? You see Reckoner Bankbuster there for Jim, but Luis and Jim both had the Bloodtithe Harvester, but those are both in the bin. But something breaking the parity over there with Fable the Mirror Breaker for Scott-Vargas.
Yeah, so this is one of those, all right, turn 2 Harvester, turn 2 Harvester. But Luis is the one that had the turn 3 Fable. There's that token in play, so Luis is the one who's a little bit ahead here because you are getting all that value from Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Let's see if any reanimation targets hit the bin. There's one. No, is that not one?
No,
that's tokens. And thought it was a Tali. So nothing super reanimate worthy just yet, but that is one of the many things that Fable does. Many, many, many things that Fable does.
It does it all.
It really does. There's a reason why such a high percentage are playing. You see a Braid's going to destroy target artifact here with the Bankbuster. That was on Luis's end step.
So everything being accounted for here. Both players at 20 life, so it could be one of those situations where you start thinking about just some hard cast haymakers. Who needs to reanimate them, right? These games go a little bit longer.
Okay, one good Fable deserves another. A little bit late here for Jim Davis, but he'll take it.
Yeah.
Wow. So nobody can get anything to stick on the battlefield.
Mirror.
This does feel like it's building up to the first player to do one of the big, big plays.
Right. And that was kind of the theory behind playing these strategies instead of what you've seen from most of the field, right? Who are on the Grixis and Rakdos midrange decks.
That being said, the reflection of Kiki Jiki is very powerful and can do some dumb stuff.
Yeah, especially if you can get, Corpse Appraiser in play.
Right. Let's see if Luis can find something with this blood token. He's going to discard
an Edict. Okay.
Yeah. Shieldred's Edict hits a land drop. He needs something good here, though.
Right.
This is not going to be fun. Oh, he has to pass turn back over.
Passes the turn, and Jim did not rummage with that blood token.
No, he didn't.
So
he likes what he sees,
he likes his hand.
Drew his card for the turn. Right now we're Chapter 2ing Fable.
And of course, with Fable going to Chapter 2, less necessary to rummage because you have the ability to cycle through 2 more cards if you want.
He discards Big Score and Black
discards
Cliffs.
Big Score.
Yeah. He has 4 mana too.
Yeah. One of the powerful cards allows you to ramp into your big spells, right?
Okay, another Bank Buster to replace the fallen Bank Buster from a little while ago.
Continuing to develop here.
Nothing from Luis.
Yeah. Remember, both of these decks still have to play a good amount of removal in their main, right? Esper Legends is still a deck you need to respect, and you need to have some number of cut downs and abrades and go for the throats, and it's possible that a lot of these players are just holding those cards in hand.
Here's a Haymaker, Cruelty of Gix for Luis Scott-Vargas.
So nothing to really reanimate right now, I don't believe.
No.
So we might just start with the Chapter 1 here,
right,
and just kind of run it up the chain.
That is, in a grindy matchup, you would prefer to do that unless you need to, because that gets you effectively the full 3-for-1 out of the deal.
But that was a double Invoke Despair here from Jim Davis. Not sure if he had land number 5.
So he missed. Luis just missed on that.
Right. Okay. Because you need to. It can only nab creatures and planeswalkers.
Right. Okay.
But we'll probably be tutoring up something nice next turn. Now, if you invoke, I believe that'll just get everything off the battlefield, right? Yeah, because it kind of does it by order. So you have to sack a creature, then you sack an enchantment.
Yep.
So that knocks out both things, and I don't know what else Luis has. I mean, if he just goes land Atali, that would be fantastic.
Boy, that Cruelty getting nabbed by the Invoke right there was brutal.
Absolutely.
Like, he got nothing out of it. He just tapped his lands for 5 and ripped up a card. Okay, here's Corpse Appraiser, though. This could really get the ball rolling now for Luis.
That can definitely get you back in.
But he's going to need a Haymaker here because Jim Davis has done a really nice job of setting himself up. He's got the Bank Buster, he's got the Reflection, and he's ready to do some work.
And we're going to kill some artifacts here with Brotherhood's End.
Okay.
So no value from the Bank Buster or the Blood Token, but there is an active Reflection in play.
That is very scary if you're sitting on Luis's side. It doesn't take much for that thing to start popping off.
But have to feel good that, again, kind of 7 mana is the point where you get really scared on both sides, right? It's like, that's when you can start hard casting your Atalis and your Breaches. So if they're on 5, you're like, okay, at least for 1 turn, you can't do the big thing. But we also saw, I believe Jim had a pair of Invoke Despairs. If he needs to just dig, he could just fire 1 off again here.
Just to get a few more cards going. Ooh, speaking of.
Wow,
Jeez.
Reloaded.
There's another Fable and another Bank Buster. Yeah, Luis just, it feels like every time he passes a turn, Jim is just like, here, deal with all of this. And so far, Luis has been able to hang on, but he had that 1 turn where he didn't do much. Now here he's Warcrafting, though, is going to kill the Reflection, and he'll have 3 to spare.
Right.
He gets to look at the top 3, and he can play one of these this turn. That's a way to start getting back into it, too.
So if you can find something like, and he exiled the... Oh, no, he's going to be playing the Bank Buster here.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Does he have a land?
That would be ideal.
Start bank busting. No, he's going to pass it back with just a couple of cards in hand.
Now Jim, Chapter 2 here.
Man, this game's been great. Like, they are really going toe-to-toe. It just feels like every time somebody passes a turn, when they get it passed back to them, they're behind.
Now Jim could potentially go up to 7 this turn, right? If the Shaman token does not die, you can attack, make a token, play a land, and then potentially play one of your 7s.
Land number 6 now for Davis.
Is this 6 mana? Okay, so it's telling me this is probably a Chandra here.
You are correct.
And Chandra has added kind of an extra wrinkle to a lot of these Rakdos mid-range decks, where before, oftentimes Invoke Despair wasn't enough to kind of close out the game, but that interaction of Chandra plus Invoke Despair I mean, you can just burn people out. The
Oh,
fact
sure.
that it can just fork any spell you cast, it's been kind of an overperformer. And a great addition to Rakdos strategies.
And assuming that there's still that other Invoke, that is exactly what Jim Davis is setting up here.
Now, does Luis's deck have an answer to a main deck Planeswalker? There's one copy of Shieldred's Edict, which I believe he discarded.
That was like way back on turn 1 or
Right.
something. Yeah, he's got Corpse Appraiser here after activating Bankbuster.
And we know that Jim has a second copy of Invoke Despair in hand. So
we saw that a long time ago. He's setting up a big,
it's gonna
nasty
be a
double Invoke.
big turn here. And you even get a discount here. You can tick up Chandra, right? Give you 2 mana. Then play an Invoke for just 3 mana.
Yeah, you can add any color.
Kill an Appraiser, draw 5 cards, deal 10 damage.
I feel like Luis would pick up his cards at that point, but let's find out.
Okay,
And Luis picked
there
up
we
his
go.
cards at that
There-
point.
Good prediction,
I
Marshall.
have covered a match or 2 of his. All right, that is going to be game number 2 incoming here. Really well done by Jim Davis there. He was able to withstand that early assault from Luis and then just keep it nice and steady. And he just never ran out of gas.
Yeah.
He just kept playing Bankbusters. He kept on playing Fables. And he's able to get there. All right, Luis has Blood Tithe Harvester. Signature 2 mana card for this deck. He's got a blood token to go with it, of course. Luis is very proud of himself. He brought his own blood tokens today,
Wow.
as well as
Wow.
Goblin token.
Yeah, he was
He was bragging about it.
bragging about it.
He really
absolutely.
was.
Oof.
Okay, you cast Duress. You got some choices here,
Yeah.
Luis. He can take any card he wants outside of the lands.
Probably taking that Fable there. But man, that hand is loaded here on Jim Davis's side. Yeah.
Gonna have to just take his next relevant play. But Jim does have a backup plan here with that Bankbuster as well.
Yep. Will have something to do with mana.
Right.
Luis putting some pressure here with the Harvester.
Is Luis going to use the blood token on end step? Yep.
And nothing to kill.
Jim just passes the turn again with that Bankbuster activation at the
Right.
ready.
Fable.
Well, that worked out pretty well
and
for Luis.
This could just be one of those Fable games.
Yeah.
Right? Where you just go, hey, I don't need to do the thing where I go over the top. If you don't have enough answers to just this curve, you're just going to die. That is the one thing when you think about this Grixis Reanimator deck compared to the other Invoke Despair decks is you can get these early starts, but if your opponent manages to stabilize, you don't quite have the burn aspect, right? Where you can just kind of get them with the Invoke or get them with the Chandra.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Couple of kind of slow turns here for Davis. Luis is starting to build up some good advantage, and this second chapter on Fable could really solidify that.
Oh, no.
Oh.
He kept everything.
He said, I'll go to attacks.
Jeez.
They'll go for the throat. Is going to take down the
Oh,
Goblin.
it's like, what are you working with here?
Oh, and there it
All
is.
right.
The cruelty of Gix.
That'll take the Chandra.
That's right.
In Jim
This
Davis's
time
hand.
he knows he's got
Yeah,
to hit.
right.
So he'll start it off with
Now,
1.
he can still play that Invoke Despair, right? So
Yep.
it'll get the Harvester, and Luis will likely sack the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, right? Because then you have the Cruelty of Gix in play, can find something else.
Whatever he wants.
The world is his oyster.
Yeah, he's got Jim down to 11 thanks to the Harvester smacking a few times, though it'll meet its end here.
I mean, if Luis has the mana, could just get Itali, right?
Sure. Okay, take a look at the card that he drew and then go to chapter 2.
Yep.
Down to 15.
Another Cruelty doesn't seem to do a whole lot here, right? So
likely to miss.
right.
So he could just go get another card, but then he's just could get the card he wants right now.
Just kind of the biggest thing that you could play.
Yeah. It might be that simple.
Is there a creature in the yard that you can already use to reanimate? I don't believe
Just Blood Tithe Harvester,
there was a Blood
maybe?
Tithe Harvester, yes. In
But
Luis's
that's
side.
really like the least exciting one you can
Sure.
possibly pick.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay, well, he's going to see what he's working with, though. As we mentioned, likely to miss and does. But he's
Get some extra
kinda
information.
running it up, yeah.
Right. Adds a layer of protection to Invoke Despair.
And sometimes you just nab something good that
Right.
Jim might have been planning on playing.
Yeah, but this the first Cruelty Gix here is just going to get a Blood Tithe Harvester, which is not that impressive. So that does give you having the Blood Tithe Harvester does give you a discard outlet, right? It creates a blood token, so if you do go ahead and fetch in a Trexa or an Atali, you can then use the blood to end of turn, discard the big creature, and then on the following turn, boom, Chapter 3, that's where you get your value. And
That's business.
This is what Luis is setting up here.
You see that Luis has them resolved such that he gets the Blood Tithe Harvester first. He's going to dig up something with the Cruelty of Gix.
Luis down to 12. Cruelty of Gix is doing lots of damage. Invoke Despair also getting him down. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Oh, did he find another Cruelty of Gix?
He must have.
Right, if you're doing that. Nope.
Boy, Invoke Despair
Okay.
would be nasty here from Jim, wouldn't it?
Yeah. What did he
board.
fetch?
Curious too.
Is it just a counter spell, do you think?
Oh, just to protect this board state?
Like a Disdainful Stroke? But right now, I feel like Jim is kind of ahead
right,
on
and
board.
because Cruelty is like bricking, right?
Right.
Like currently just doesn't even have a target? Is that right?
I don't see anything right now, no.
And Luis has already used the blood.
Chapter 3 and take your Atraxa.
Oh, there was an Atrax in the yard. We couldn't see
we
it.
couldn't see it. I see.
But Jim Davis just stole it.
Jeez.
He jumped out in front with Cruelty of Gix
Wow.
and stole Luis's Atraxa, his best reanimation target. That was mean.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
That was
no.
mean, Jim Davis.
All the value.
Wow, Chapter 2 off of Fable, not bad.
Artifact, land, sorcery, instant creature.
Wait,
is
stop.
what we've
Come
chosen
back.
here.
That's my Atraxa.
A 7/7 that draws you 5 cards. Is that good?
That has to be game.
Wow.
Yeah, and it has 4 abilities. You can see them on your screen there.
Yeah, and that is a singleton copy of Cruelty of Gix and Jim Davis' sideboard.
What a theft that was from Davis.
Jeez.
And by the way, Luis's play makes a lot more sense when we see that Atraxa was sitting in the graveyard.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, in the mirror, you could never get away with that.
Right. And the thing is also, Luis is probably thinking, well, he's only got the one.
Yeah, and I looked at his hand
Right?
like last turn.
Right, we've already been looking through the cards, so I'm just going to play like you don't have one. And if you do, bad beats.
And this is exactly what a bad beats looks like, because he's about to get ran over by his own Atraxa.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, Jim did give him a target for his Chapter 3 by making this attack.
You know, I think Jim is okay with that. I think there's
You're all right with it?
it's, ahead on a couple of cards at this point. What does Luis need to get back into this?
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering, too.
Right? Is it just a tally off the top? Right?
I just cast it and
just cast it and try to hit some
some-
removal spells.
some
Hit a
sweeper.
go for the throat for the Atraxa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely on the list. Let's see if he can find something. Oh, there's an Atali.
There was one in the yard. Okay.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah, but there's a Graveyard Trespasser in play, so the Atraxa will not die, right?
You're right.
You're going to see a Fable go to the graveyard, potentially a Bankbuster or a Graveyard Trespasser. And remember, there's a lethal 7/7 flying lifelinker in play on Jim Davis's side.
So as long as Jim chooses to maintain Atraxa, he will pick up the victory, and that's exactly what he's done. That cruelty of Gix.
Ooh, the one-up.
You thought you were Reanimator? I'm Reanimator. And boy, he hit 5 cards off it too, so it must be nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you play it, right? You play the 1 copy of Cruelty Gix. It's got applications in a lot of different matchups. It's just a very powerful card. And of course, coming into this event, you had to have expected there to be some Reanimator strategies. And if they don't see it coming, you can get them.
Yeah, I mean, he had that window where he hit Chapter 2 and discarded and found exactly what he needed.
Right.
That's the worst case scenario for Luis, but that's also why that card's in the list for Jim. All right, we've got a little more action to bring you here from this round. We've got Javier Dominguez and Eli Loveman. They're both playing Rakdos Midrange, and we're going to join them in game number 3. See who can pick up the match here. You see them having a little chit-chat before we get going.
Yeah, and these are teammates playing the exact same deck here. Both members of one of the best decks coming in, one of the best teams coming in, in Team Handshake here.
And you see why they call themselves that as they shook hands before game 3. All right, we're going to be underway here. Eli Loveman's on 6 this time around with Javier at the full 7. And of course, you notice here that we're playing sped up Magic a little bit just to, well, we want to see the conclusion of this match. Let's see what happens.
And some members of this team jokingly calling this deck Rakdos Burn, as so many effects that this deck plays just drains you or burns you, right? We're talking about Invoke Despair, Chandra, right? That's classic. Shieldred also drains you for 2. And then they also have a little piece of technology. Some of them are playing 2 copies of Light Up the Night. Light Up the Night plus Chandra is lots of damage.
That is a lot. Looks like that's a Nathan Stoyer signed Shieldred.
Oh, that gives you at least 1%.
It says 2022 World Championship on it. That's another %.
Jeez.
It stops there, though.
How can you beat that?
I mean, I haven't seen anybody beat just a regular one.
Yeah. But normal start here, and again, since we're looking at Rakdos colors, no real way to disrupt in an Invoke Despair other than Duress. Can Eli follow up Javier's Despair here?
No, he's got cut down, though.
And what is that?
Fable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, these decks generate lots of different tokens and permanents, as you can see here.
Dude, it's a lot.
There's just so many different things.
There's lots of milling.
Blood, treasure, milling,
going through
counters.
The graveyard.
Yeah.
It is a lot. I was talking to some of the Team CFB players, and even they said that this is a lot, like even for them.
Right.
You know, to track everything. I also think it benefits more experienced, players with that mental horsepower. They kind of can automatically do a bunch of these actions, where if you're still learning, you're kind of like having to sort through everything each time.
Yeah. So Liliana from Javier's side, not a super commonly played card these days. And Eli getting aggro here with the Sokanzan allows him to actually get Liliana off the board.
Maybe that's why they don't play Liliana that much anymore. She died.
Eli does have the favorable board position here. That Fable.
Duress. Ooh, is going to take Chandra.
Right. Looks like that was the last card in Eli's hand, so wanted to maybe filter through it and perhaps find a land instead to have the Duress with.
Looks like Chapter 3, though, for...
Okay, and
Fable.
All right, so
Graveyard
Eli
Trespasser
on the beatdown plan here. Although nothing to really beat down with.
Yeah.
And Javier cycling through those Duresses as they don't really do anything anymore. So now it's just going to come down to you know, the 5 and 6 drops that these decks have.
How about Invoke again? How do you feel about that?
That's a good one.
Okay.
I feel that that's a strong one.
Have to agree. That is going to leave the Graveyard Trespasser.
And Javier's got a significant mana advantage here.
He does.
Looking like he has 8 lands in play with, what, 4 or 5 cards in hand, and Eli's kind of top decking here. So now you have to really be liking Javier's side of the table, right? Up cards. The Trespasser not doing a whole lot here. And now Javier's got all the resources here. Active Fable, active Mirror Breaker. Oh, Chandra time.
Okay, well, he wasn't able to get
Okay.
that first one down, but this one's going to hit.
Oh, and we're looking for cards right now here. And remember, any spell you cast, you get to cast it twice with a Chandra in play. Really, really powerful. I mean, imagine even just like hitting a duress off of that,
Yeah,
right?
you could just tear apart somebody's hand. You can see that they're leaving the cards exiled just for...
Right, and I believe Javier did hit a Light Up the Night, so you could just choose to cast a Light Up the Night. It'll go into your graveyard, and then on the following turn, I think that's lethal, right?
You could just
Or
cast
very
it
close.
for red and just put it in the bin.
Exactly.
I see.
You can cast it for, or even 2.
Or you can just go off.
If you cast it for 2, that's 4 damage to Eli, and then on the following turn, you flash it back, right?
Yeah.
Remove 6 counters from Chandra, and that's 12 damage.
Maybe this is Rakdos Burn.
I mean, I
They're
don't.
not-
They were
only half joking.
Right, exactly. They were half joking here.
Is there such thing as a 3/4 joke?
All right. It looks like we're seeing a flashback. Oh, and it's just killing. Oh, you can do 2 targets there. So it looks like it's killed the Graveyard Trespasser and also did some damage to Loveman potentially.
Okay, so Javier prioritizing getting the board state worked
Right.
through.
Just to protect the Chandra. So Invoke Despair here. Eli really needs that to get the Chandra off the battlefield. Okay, looks like got his own Chandra back with Takenuma.
Okay.
Okay, but what can you do? You know, Eli's tapped out. You can only deal 5 damage. So that Chandra's still at 1, and then you can kill it.
Okay, I was going to say that's
Okay.
really annoying to have to leave it at 1, but Eli has the plan.
Right, but remember, Eli's at 7 here. And we're looking at an attack for 6 that could put Eli down to 1 with the pilot.
Yeah, he had to
And
expend
you
all
get a
those
treasure.
resources and attacks
So,
to get
I mean,
those
now
key
you're at 1,
permanents,
and
but
Javier has so many cards he can
yeah,
find here to
this
kill
is
him.
really in a burn deck,
Yeah.
you know, and that's going to do it. Javier Dominguez picks up the win there. Oh, I better get used to these matchups, Paul. This is what we're going to be seeing a lot of. You know, a lot of our top tables are made up of Rakdos shell with extra stuff thrown in, whether they wanted to be a little bigger, a little smaller, whether they wanted to beat a certain matchup, and we're going to see those actually clash up against each other.
Yeah, and so a lot of people might be thinking, okay, well, we saw some cool stuff earlier with the Reanimator strategies and all that stuff. But at the same time, you can also just play this deck, have access to more interaction, because cards like Invoke Despair still good in the mirror, right? And Chandra still good in the mirror, right? And these cards have more applications, and you don't have to have hands where you have those 7 drops stranded in your hand. So I'm curious to see how everything shakes out, right? Because I think playing a deck like this gives you a little more consistency against the rest of the field, whereas when you try to go big, you might get a slight edge.
Right.
A slight edge. I'm not even sure how big that edge is,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
maybe a slight edge.
So we'll have to see that. But we've got more action for you from this round. That's right. We've got Joe Lossett versus Michael Van Vaals. And they are...
Thank
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm going to tell all of you now, I'm not exactly sure how this matchup plays out. Was not quite on my radar. But
that's why we're happy right now. We got
but-
mono blue versus what? Four
Hey.
color?
look, Four-color legend. That's probably Esper Legends with the splash. Is my guess.
Okay. Well, we're gonna get to see right now. We're gonna come in game number 2, and let's see what these two have come up with for us.
Chat makes a really great point. If you're gonna play 4 colors, why don't you just put
Did
Fable
you
in
say
your
chat
deck?
makes a good point?
Yeah. Sorry. That was a mistake.
I never heard that phrase before, but okay.
Interesting point.
Yeah, interesting. Good. What did they say?
That if you're going to play 4 colors, why don't you just play Fable?
So this is like an anti-Fable stance.
But looking at what Michael is playing here, it looks like it's an Esper mid-range deck here with some kind of green card. Excuse me, Esper Legends deck.
Wow, look at that. That was Hottie Jin for Joe Lossett, his first play of the game. It got bounced by Otawara. Michael's just like, no.
Jeez, okay. Getting in. I mean, not the biggest clock at the moment, right? So Joe can just redeploy the Jin here.
We have the classic Thalia versus Hottie Jin canceling each other out.
That is true. There you go.
Take that.
Not something I would have necessarily anticipated here.
Interesting, Joe has decided not to recast his Hottie Jin this time.
Okay, probably has maybe a Thirst for Discovery plus counter as an option here. And that's the reason to play green?
Make disappear. Glissa Sunslayer? That is the
that
first
is
strike
That is a powerful legendary creature.
If you can hit your opponent.
If you can hit your opponent, you can kill a Fable.
Little bit out of fashion cards like that.
Yeah.
Like, ideally when it enters the battlefield, acceptable when it attacks. If it actually has to hit, it's like, eh.
Right, exactly. It's like you get an entire turn cycle.
Right. Like even Rafine, right, is like, okay, we'll do attack. You know, we'll bring it to that level.
I will say, though, Joe Lossett here, casting this Hottie Jin, it doesn't take a whole lot before this Hottie Jin can just take over the game and end the game in 2 attacks.
They have those crazy turns.
Right. Oh, and another one here.
Ooh.
Currently sitting at 2 4s and going, I'm going to attack you. And now, by the way, that Thalia just doesn't do anything. Right? Now for Joe, every spell still costs 1 less.
That's funny. It's the tug of war between the two.
Ooh, but this cannot be countered. But if Joe has something like a slip out the back, could phase it out. But this is going to be a decent attack, so we're now kind of in that racing situation here.
And Michael's getting the big Rafine attack going as well. That's always got to feel good when you sleeve up this deck to get to untap and actually go to combat and turn that thing sideways.
All right, so 2 counters.
On Thalia, that's shore up.
Shore up to block. Although there is a Skrelv in play, but you can't use the Skrelv on both of the creatures. So Joe can potentially eat one of the 2 creatures that's attacking, because Thalia is a 4/3, so it looks like Michael's going to protect the Thalia, but you can still block the Rafine here.
That's right. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Wow, shore up the blue swords to plowshares?
Sure. I feel like there's just too many swords to plowshares now if we kind of go down that rabbit
There's like
hole.
3 blue swords to plowshares in the limited set.
Oh,
right now,
okay. And
okay,
can't really block with that Skrelv in play.
Yeah,
right?
and the second Hottie Jin hits. I mean, remember, Hottie Jin's been bounced twice this game.
Yeah. 10 to 10. I mean, it's going to be tough for Michael to find enough offense here to get through. If Joe casts 1 spell, this is a lethal attack from the Jins.
Wow.
And, I mean, we're looking at, what, 3 Otawaras, right? 1 in play, 2 into graveyard.
Right.
Really unlikely for Michael to have a 4th, if he even plays 4.
Oh, and he just passed a turn back now?
Yeah, so can Joe just play a spell here to get in for the lethal attack?
Boy. Michael felt like he had a pretty impressive board state going there, but he's not been able to capitalize it. Honestly, just hasn't been able to get enough damage through.
And not able to attack for lethal here. But again, Joe's 1 damage short here. Excuse me, Michael is 1 damage short. We're looking at an attack for 5, which could get Joe down to 1.
Well, he's going to have to settle for 4 down to 2, but he's got 2 lethal flyers.
What? What can he do here?
Nobody's played a spell in 2 turns. What is going on?
Thirst. Okay, so now
Yeah.
they're super lethal.
So Thirst for Discovery, probably just looking for anything that says counter target something.
Negate, right?
Another
Any
shore
counter
up.
spell. Yeah, but I mean, this Joe's got to have locked it up from here.
Right. I mean, if
Yeah.
Michael would not let him cast Thirst for Discovery and just be like, sure, let's just see what happens.
Yeah,
you know.
this is going to be it.
And that's it. Fist bump says Joe Lossett's going to pick up the win. Mono blue tempo, yes, please.
Yeah.
Like that
Wow.
is not a popular deck in this metagame.
No, absolutely
And
not.
he's got my attention.
Hey, again, it's one of those things where you have to try to predict the metagame. Mono Blue Tempo really struggles against aggressive creature strategies for the most part. However, it can do well in a field where people are trying to cast cards like Cruelty of Gix. So if you expect a lot of people to kind of go outside the box, play Cruelty of Gix, we're probably going to see some domain control decks down the line. This might be reasonably positioned.
How is it against
We'll
the
see.
Rakdos shell?
I think of the mid-range strategies, that's probably the hardest matchup because the Rakdos deck in general, well, the
It's going
Rakdos
to be a
deck.
tough day for Joe Lossett if that's the case.
Well, specifically, Rakdos has better mana. You take a little bit less damage from your lands, so it's a little bit better against aggressive strategies, is what I want to say. But I mean, you know, if you play against kind of the bigger decks, Joe might have, you know, and he gets paired against those, he might have a pretty good day. He's already started off here 5-0.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we will be over at the news desk to help set up our next round. Don't go anywhere.